Hello, good evening. Thanks very much for having me here. Hopefully not going to be a regrettable decision. This is the first time I've spoken to more than 8 people. Last time was, there you go, yeah, that sounds more like it. A very unfortunate best man speech, so hopefully this goes slightly better. There you go, so I am, oh wait, there you go, that's what I was waiting for. The notes I printed out came out on font 8 before I looked at them, so this should make everything a little bit more interesting. Oh, fucking hell. Sorry. I'm the European Managing Editor of Vice. I put the UK magazine together, and I also oversee the European editions. What I'm going to talk to you guys about tonight is basically how I got, briefly how I got where I am, because it's not particularly interesting, and then I think also mainly about why I think Vice has managed to retain a place in the UK magazine market, and also more generally about what I think magazines need to do to retain people's interests, or at least make the most of a format that lots of people say is no longer relevant or interesting, possibly. So firstly, I started working at a magazine. I was at Management's Day magazine, which is obviously a pretty big jump. I learned a lot of stuff there. I did a lot of advertorials about industrial regeneration in central Italy, stuff like that. But it was great. I learned a lot there. And then I met the editor of Vice, who's now the global editor-in-chief, Andy Kappa, when he was drunk, and he offered me a job. And I turned up at the office the next day like he told me to, and he didn't turn up for 3 days. And I was there every day, and eventually, oh, hello, sorry, I just saw someone I recognise. Anyway, eventually I've been there for about 7 years now, so I've gone from a kind of, essentially an intern up through associate editor, up to managing editor, and now I oversee the UK magazine and European editions more by kind of doggedness than any innate talent or set of skills. I think it's interesting to maybe talk about how much Vice has changed from when I first started there. Basically, I'm going to also talk about how the magazine is put together. So, generally speaking, there are offices all around the world. This is going to be really quick because it's essentially quite boring admin stuff that no one cares about, but which I spend all my time looking into. So there's lots of offices around the world. Everyone feeds stories into the New York office. And by the way, I'm strictly speaking about print here. I'm like the sad print person in the office in the corner on my own. Everyone else is obviously making amazing films, and there's a website now. The company's diversified a lot. But one of the main ways we make the most of our content is by sharing between all those different mediums. So film feeds into the magazine stories feed into film, things that don't work for the magazine get put on the website stories that get a lot of attention, we then pick up and do a more in-depth version for the magazine. So it's kind of all about sharing between all these essentially separate mediums and making the most of the content that we have. On top of that, we've got offices all around the world. I think last time I counted there were 31 or 32, but I could be wrong and might get in trouble for being wrong on record. But that means that at any one time you should have people who are able to give you stories and give you content from anywhere you need, or at least they're closer to it than you are. So far, that's been kind of a personal problem for me because it meant that the only trips I've been on for work are Rochdale and Belfast, which weren't, to be honest, the most cheerful places I've been. But that's what happens if you have an office in Mexico, so you know they get to do that stuff. So when Vice started a while ago, I don't know, I'm just going to give you, this is a cartoon I commissioned slightly nervously for our 10-year anniversary UK edition. The magazine started off as essentially a work program for 3 people in Canada. It was a zine, which then did quite well and became a popular magazine, moved to New York, and then from there spread to where we are today. It's been running in the UK for 11 years and in the US for 21 years. And the company has changed a lot. As you know, this kind of obviously, I was nervous about it, but it worked out okay. I don't think anyone saw it, so it was fine. But we are now, you know, we do make a lot of different content to what we used to. We do a lot of video, a lot of news. But I think the magazine still holds an important and specific place within that. There are certain things you can do in magazines and that people enjoy in magazines that I personally feel still can't quite get online. And obviously I'm hugely biased in that, but that's just kind of how I feel about it. So there's two ways we get the most out of the magazine, I think. There's the stories we cover and the variety of stories we cover, and then there's also making the most of the actual print medium itself. So I'm just going to choose, this isn't, I was going to say it was like kind of randomly chosen issue from last year, but it's not. It's an issue I've specially chosen because it's got, you know, lots of nice stuff in it. This was issue 5 from last year, so this is just to give people who aren't familiar with the magazine a kind of rundown of the sort of stuff that we have in each issue. So this is all from the V12 N5 issue last year. So we had, I'm not going to look at it as well because I can't look and read my tiny notes. So this is a story about an American communist who defected into Eastern Germany, a white power student group in an American university, the Ku Klux Klan in Memphis, because you can't have too many, you know, racists in the magazine, obviously, so we doubled up on that. A photo story about the photographer's disabled friend George and how he likes to have a nice time, one of which turned out to be being buried in the sand. A fiction piece by Ed Park, one of the founders of The Believer, which was really, really good. That's obviously an illustration of fiction. That was a piece that ran with it. It's not great, it's hard to illustrate fiction in a slideshow. Ben Anderson, a well-known news reporter and journalist, did a piece for us about the kind of uselessness of his experiences in Afghanistan and the kind of never-ending misery that goes on there. It's quite a depressing issue, actually, now I think about it out loud. That was followed up on a slightly lighter note by the, at the time, I think, unpublished photos by Ewan Spencer of the UK Garage, kind of halcyon days, which was nice for me because almost all the photos were taken in Coliseum Club in Vauxhall, which was a place I used to walk past on the way to school, which always had police tape around it, and I always wondered what happened in there, but that's what happened. Then we did a really cheerful piece about CISA, which is a kind of drug. It's kind of a bit like crocodile, but for Greek people, which has kind of come out of the recession, a new, really, really unpleasant drug that's taking hold in Athens. Then a Mexican illegal immigrants living in Suez in the United States, just over the border. A piece about, another cheerful piece about, that was kind of a think piece about Chechnya following the Boston Marathon bombings with some unpublished photos by Robert King. I think, I could be wrong on that, oh well. Finally, the Cora tribe, the last indigenous tribe in Mexico. Oh no, that wasn't finally. And then finally, emo subway dance gangs in Mexico City. So I think kind of, obviously I chose that issue specifically because it has a large variety of stuff in it, but I think that's one thing we offer in the magazine is you can select what you put out and what people see all in one go. And it's quite fun for us because I do think we cover a variety of stories in each issue that you probably wouldn't find elsewhere. And on top of that, you've obviously got fashion shoots and reviews and all that stuff, which I frankly just forgot to put in there. The other thing, so next on to, in more general terms, I think why magazines are still fun. Obviously, magazines can't hope to compete with websites when it comes to breaking news, immediate news. I mean, it takes me weeks of kind of crying and thrashing around to get the magazine to print. So anything, breaking news related, so I haven't looked at anyone over there. So anything kind of breaking news or super time sensitive is obviously very hard to do in print, but there are certain things which I think you can capitalize on. Obviously, there are magazines like Harper's, New Yorker, which run long-form articles. There are obviously also websites, aggregator websites like Longform and Longread, which would probably point to me, my next point being completely invalid, which is that I kind of still feel that people like to read long articles on paper. Obviously, people do read them online as well, but a lot of websites tend to keep their word counts quite low. So it's nice to have printed material if you're going to be sitting there for a while reading, and that might be me being kind of old-fashioned because it's kind of my job, and if no one likes reading things which are long or looking at paper, then I'm going to have to find something else to do. But I think that's one thing. I think the main thing, though, is photography and the visual side of things. Any photographer I ever talk to is always weirdly more interested still now in having their photos run in print than they are on the website, even though on the website it'd be seen by 100,000 times more people. Photographers still like their stuff being printed, or at least all the photographers I've spoken to. And I think also in print you have a control over your photos, which you don't get on websites. You can order spreads, facing photos, the run of, the order of images. I don't know what the next one is. Oh yeah, these are just photos. This is not specific to anything. So these are some photos from recent issues. And you can control how people see them, how they're delivered, and people who like photos, I think, still do like seeing them in print. I'm going to stop doing this because this goes on for a while. You get the idea. It's fine. Photos. And then on top of that, you have fashion magazines that specialize in glossy, high-cost shoots and so on. So there are certain things that print delivers, which websites, I feel, still don't. And I think one of the things about Vice is, on top of the variety of content we contain, we try to make the most of those things which still websites haven't quite nailed how to deliver. You have amazing photo websites with great slideshows and great features where you click on it and it's like reading through a magazine. You have the clicky and the turning page thing on the website. But I still feel that for photography and for getting the most out of illustration as well, I think I did some illustration. Yeah, so we did quite a lot of full page illustrations, DPS illustrations and illustrated pieces, things like that, which I I just think work better in print. This is not, I've given up on these, by the way. Oh. So I'm just going to see whereabouts roughly I went to. Okay, I think I'm probably ready to wrap up. It might have been 5 minutes, it might have been 11, I'm not quite sure. But basically I think Vice has managed to hack a kind of a hole in a fairly rough environment by delivering a variety of stories and the kind of stories that other people wouldn't cover, and unifying across all the different mediums we work in, films, magazines, and website, is all about telling either stories that other people don't tell, or telling them, or trying to tell them in a way that other people don't, either a more direct way or a more honest way, or a kind of just a different angle or perspective on things. And when it comes to print specifically, it's just about making the most of what print still has over the websites and over the internet. And I think that is making things look as good as you can, getting the most out of photos, laying things out as nice as you can. And also, Vice Magazine's free, which obviously helps a lot, because you don't have to worry about people paying for it. Yeah, that's, I don't know. I'm not going to probably watch that back, but hopefully that was of some interest. And yeah, thank you very much for listening.